In our previous lesson, we discussed how hardware and software interact with each other. We discussed two basic types of software. One was application software, things like Word, PowerPoint, Photoshop, and the second was system software, where we referred to operating systems, language translators, and utilities. This lesson, we're going to focus on operating systems. By definition, operating systems are system software that enables hardware to communicate with application software. So let's figure out the purpose of our operating system. Well, first, it recognizes input from an input device. Second, it sends output to output devices such as monitors and printers. It also keeps track of files, folders, and directories. It controls devices like the monitor and the printer and the keyboard. Now, manufacturers of those peripheral devices provide programs called drivers. The operating system uses these drivers to communicate with various hardware devices. It also manages the resources for applications. So instead of each application like Word or PowerPoint worrying about print settings, the operating system is responsible for those settings so that each application does not have to duplicate them. This is why your computer system can use hardware and settings different from another computer, but still reliably run the same applications. Another way an operating system helps applications is by performing system and file maintenance tasks. So for example, the operating system is responsible for such system tasks as preparing the desktop, managing visual and audio effects, handling memory, and maintaining power settings. Equally important are the file maintenance systems. This is how the operating system keeps track of our files. It's called a file system. So how the hierarchy and the naming and the attributes and how much space the files can use, these are all very important things that the operating system is responsible for. There are two categories of operating systems. First is the personal computer operating system, such as the ones that sit on our laptops and desktops. Secondly are the handheld or embedded operating systems. These are mobile operating systems similar to the ones that sit on our desktop, but they're a little bit smaller and not quite as capable. We use those in phones, gaming systems, and cameras. In these devices, the operating system sits on a ROM chip. There are several different kinds of operating systems for personal computers, and each one is designed to work with one or more particular processors. The first one we have here is Windows, the Windows operating system. The one shown over here is the newest operating system out. It's called Windows 8, and it's designed to go on a regular desktop or a touch screen. This was designed to work with an Intel processor, and the Windows XP is the most widely used version. In fact, Windows is the most popular operating system of all. Secondly, we have the Mac OS X, and this particular screen is the Mac OS X Mountain Lion. The old Macintoshes used to use a processor manufactured by Motorola, and Windows did not work with that particular type of processor. Currently, the Macintoshes use an Intel processor similar to Windows. We learned in the first quarter that Macintosh became really popular after it created this graphical user interface with all of the pretty pictures, but we know that they didn't invent it. However, Xerox Corporation developed that idea. Thirdly, we have Unix operating system. It's used primarily by scientists and programmers and was actually developed by a group of programmers for AT&T. It's considered a multitasking, portable operating system, meaning it can run on any hardware platform. But some of the versions of Unix still have command line interface where you have to enter the text commands instead of seeing the pretty graphical user interface that we see here. This is a very stable operating system and rarely crashes. They actually have on Linux, which is a variant of Unix, have this thing called GNOME, a GUI, where you can choose whether you want your interface to look like Windows or Mac. GNOME includes software applications like word processing, spreadsheet, databases, presentations, email, but the available application programs is way fewer than those that we would find for Windows or Mac. And I just wanted to let you know that Linux and IBM AIX are both based on Unix. So moving on to the second category of operating systems are the mobile operating systems, or handheld and embedded operating systems. Now, as I mentioned earlier, they have the same principles as Windows or Linux, but they are usually smaller and less capable than the desktop systems. So first we have the Android operating system. This was created by Google, and it's an open source operating system, and it's really based on Linux. And we have the very popular Apple iOS. This was originally designed for the iPhone, so it was originally called iPhone OS, but it is also used on all Apple mobile devices like the iPod, iPod Touch, iPad, the iPad Mini now that's out, and these became very popular due to the touch screen where we just use our fingertips and multi-touch gestures. But the main applications are designed for the phone, like email and web browsing and media playing. BlackBerry is another operating system that runs on handheld devices. It is supplied by Research in Motion, and it's known for its multitasking, Bluetooth, instant messaging. There's the embedded Linux operating system, which is a scaled-down Linux operating system used in devices like the mobile phones, media players, PDAs, smartwatches, and a couple other items. Next, we're moving on to the Palm operating system. It's competitive with Windows Mobile. It's also called the Garnet operating system. And it has a lot of common built-in applications like the address book, calculator, calendar, contacts. It also includes handwriting recognition software. There's the Symbian operating system. It's a multitasking operating system designed for smartphones, but some popular features would be the capability to send and receive email and faxes, contact lists, and browse the web. Moving on to the Windows Embedded CE operating system. This is scaled down from Windows and is designed for devices like the digital cameras, security robots, gaming, GPSs, media players, and set-top boxes like for cable. Now there's also the Windows Phone operating system, which is based on the Windows Embedded CE. It's the mobile operating system for smartphones and other types of handheld computers. This allows to perform tasks like accessing email, recording and watching video, instant messaging, reading ebooks, playing games, things like that. Now we're going to talk about sharing files on different operating systems. Now there are plenty of instances where you create a file on one operating system like Windows, but you're unable to read it on a Macintosh. Well, there's a couple solutions to this. The first one is an emulation card. It's a hardware solution where you're adding a card to the actual motherboard of the computer so that the computer can run a different program that was designed for a different operating system. However, there are software programs that are available as well. Now, there are file types that can be read on different operating systems. There's the text format, where it's just simple text. There's not really hardly any formatting that go with it. So you could essentially open up a Microsoft Word document, create your file, and save it as a .txt file. And then you could email it to a Mac user where they could open it and it would look the exact same. Another option is the rich text format. It is kind of the same thing, but it has a little bit more formatting. So the same thing, you could open up Word, write your document, and save it as a .rtf, mail it over to another operating system, and they should be able to open it without a problem. It's a nice little exercise to perform, and I strongly recommend you doing it. Computer systems operating system also allows you to set limitations to protect the data on the computer. This is why we have system administrators. System administrators are people who have administrator accounts, which is really just a local account or security group that have administrator rights. Now, administrator rights give you the ability to add accounts, change the names and the passwords, establish what kind of security level you have, whether you are only able to read something, whether you're able to edit something, what you can see. Just like on the labs in the desktops in the computer lab, there's certain things that you can't access, very different from your home computer. You're also able to allocate storage, and we always want to be able to monitor the systems so that we don't get any malware or any viruses. So they perform a lot of system maintenance. They do backups. They're also in charge of adding software. If you notice, if you would not be able to add software on any of those machines, it would prompt you for an administrator password. If you did not put it in right, then it would stop the software installation. If you got it correct, then it would go ahead and install it for you. So system administrators are just like the guys down the hall who are able to change your passwords to the portal or to your email, things like that. And they are very high level, and that's why they have the administrator account. Whereas students and faculty do not have administrator accounts. They are at a different lower level where we are not able to install software on those machines. And it's all to protect the data and make sure everything is secure. Every now and then you are going to have a problem with your operating system. And here are a couple issues that you might run into. The first one being incompatibility. As I've discussed previously in the quarter, Quicken for Windows, let's say you have that CD and you put it in your Mac's not going to be able to read it. It's not going to understand it at all. So that would be one issue. I'm on a Mac and I'm wondering why isn't this working? What's wrong? You pop out the CD and it says Quicken for Windows. There you go. So that's incompatibility. They are not compatible with each other. Another possible problem would be file corruption. These things arise from if there's a power failure, if the power goes out during a storm, or whether you might just shut down your computer by pushing the button rather than going to the start menu and shutting down that way. Viruses can cause these problems, or let's say if you're doing a software installation and it gets interrupted, and also outdated drivers. That could also be an issue. As we talked before, drivers are little programs provided by the manufacturers. But let's say you have a new printer and you have an old driver on your computer, you need to download a new driver from that manufacturer's website. Thirdly, we have things like disk crashes. Sometimes restarting your computer could just help that, or maybe you even need to upgrade the operating system. But it usually happens when your operating system is unstable. Sometimes you'll get your machine will not boot up properly, and you'll see a message that says you are in safe mode. So what this means is that something didn't function properly when you rebooted your computer, and it's just so that you can do diagnostic testing. Now, Microsoft does have online tutorials that address the Windows 7 performance and maintenance issues. So if you go online for troubleshooting, that's always a good idea. Now we're going to discuss ethics. As in life, and especially in good counsel, we often talk about making the right decision, right and wrong. We want to make the right choice. What's also relevant in the technology world. So there's computer ethics. So with technology, the issues that we come across are privacy, copyright, and theft. And we've talked about it before. We're talking about piracy, when you have music and you download it free from the internet, and then you go ahead and you rip it on a CD and then you give it to a friend. That's considered theft. That's unethical. Well, there's also these people called white hat hackers. I don't know if you know the difference between blue collar and white collar. Like blue collar people, when you think about them, they think of painters, plumbers, things like that. And then you think of white collar office people that are a little bit higher in corporations. Well, there's a thing called white hat hackers, where these hackers want to breach computer security systems just so that they can learn how the networks work. They want to understand. They're not out there to hurt anything, but they want to learn it. But is that right or is that wrong? I mean, they're breaching a computer security system, so I would say that would be wrong. Now, there is the IEEE and the ACM, who have created a code of ethical standards, and many businesses and organizations have chosen to adopt these codes, and they strongly suggest that everybody follow them. The only problem is that they're codes, they're not laws, so following them is strictly voluntary. And hopefully, going to good counsel, you have learned the difference between right and wrong, and you know that piracy and copyright and theft is wrong. We're going to finish up by talking about PC support specialists. These people are the specialists that provide support. They're very knowledgeable in software and hardware, and you're able to contact them online, over the phone, chatting, or sometimes you can actually call them and they can come out and visit. Things like the Geek Squad from Best Buy, things like that, or even just the chat people on a Dell site or the Apple people, things like that. All of these people need to know information about the most current software and hardware. They have to be able to speak with you, so they need good communication skills. And they also need to know the different operating systems. If you're going to be working in a business, a large business, they might have different operating systems in different departments. So they're going to need to know both of them. These specialists also perform testing. They do all of the maintenance. They have to worry about virus protection. They have to worry about backups. They need to make sure everybody is up and running. Just like the guys down the hall, those are good counsel's support specialists. They take care of everybody. They make sure everybody's email is up and running. They make sure that everyone's laptops are up to date. They make sure that the computer lab software is working properly. Now, in order to obtain a job like that, a company or a school would prefer that you have graduated from college, but, extensive experience would also be quite helpful, because if you recall, Bill Gates, left Harvard when he started working with IBM. And just because he didn't have his degree didn't mean he was any less knowledgeable about his coding and computer stuff. So the more you know, the better it is.